Good evening, Minister. The main purpose of the legislation is to enshrine European regulations into Irish law. The Irish fishing community must shudder with dread when they hear the phased new EU regulations. There have been so many EU regulations placed on the fishing community, and very rarely do they seem to be introduced with the intention of making it easier to make a living from fishing. The first thing that catches my eye in this bill is the Irish Fishing Master Register. The bill contains details of all of the information which is to be kept on each registered owner. It allows only registration when the person is an Irish citizen and has fewer than 90 penalty points. It is, of course, welcome that we have a registration system which does not allow foreign rogue traders or serial offenders. But what about those who will be required as skippers on work permits? Because, like many sectors at this time, there is still a difficulty in sourcing staff of all kinds, and we must not limit their ability to recruit on a work visa basis, where and when there is no one in Ireland either available or wants the job. The bill also requires the Master to furnish the Minister with such information as he or she may reasonably require, and that the format of applications will be also up to the Minister to specify. I would urge the Minister in this regard that if this bill does pass, that such information required will be kept to only the information of which is absolutely necessary. I would not like to see a situation where honourable and genuine people are made to jump through unnecessary bureaucratic hoops in order to become a registered master, and turn away from the prospect as it becomes too onerous in nature, more about the paperwork than their ability. I also hope that the form and manner of the application process will be made user-friendly and will have multiple options, including both online and traditional application methods, as this is a problem in so many other sectors, not least the HGV driver licence sector. In broad terms, I fundamentally support the idea that we need controls over who is allowed to operate with a fishing licence in our waters. However, there are aspects further along in this bill, and many of my colleagues have mentioned them today, that are causing fishers, my fishing constituents, great concern. I draw my colleagues' attention to the section titled Assignment of Points by Authority. Where an infringement occurs, the bill makes a distinction between how an Irish citizen should be treated as compared with the citizen of another EU member state. To quote A, in a case where the master concerned is an Irish citizen, notify the master in writing. Section 1 of it having been so notified, and 2 of the proposal to assign the appropriate points in accordance with Annex 30 of the Commission's regulation to the master by the series of infringements. B, in a case where the master concerned is a national of another member state, notify the master 1 of it having been so notified, and 2 that it is proposed to notify the competent authority of the member state of which the master is a national of the detection of the series infringement. So, Minister, you can see immediately that a non-level playing field will exist if this bill is passed in its present format. An Irish citizen who commits an infringement in Irish waters will have penalty points applied by the Irish authorities, yet when it is a foreign master who commits an infringement in Irish waters, they will not have penalty points applied by the Irish authorities. All we can do is notify the authority in their country of origin. Now, what mechanism will be used and how proportionate will that policing be on foreign fishing boats compared to Irish boats? Surely we should have the authority to police our own waters as we see fit, rather than only being able to refer offences to other jurisdictions. It isn't just referred to the police force of their country of origin. Offences committed in our waters or lands should be dealt with here, and that should be the case in all matters. This is a very fundamental issue. If this passes, then we do not have a level playing field, as I've already stated. We do not have the right to police our own waters, and we do not have the right to punish offenders in our own waters. A very concerning state of affairs, and one I will not be supporting. The bill then goes on to highlight all of the different levels of suspensions based on the number of penalty points accumulated. Again, I want to reiterate, I have no problem with Irish rule breakers facing sanctions, but we could have a situation where foreign registered vehicles who continually break the rules can continue to fish in our waters because we have no powers to deal with them, and that we do not use them proportionately. If the authority in the country of origin doesn't take action or isn't as zealous as our own SFPA, or as they should be, I suppose, then we will have a two-tiered system of regulation. This cannot be tolerated. We must be able to penalise any vessels fishing in our waters. I ask the following questions of all my colleagues here who claim to represent fishing communities. Would you feel comfortable visiting your local quayside and explaining to the hard-working fishermen that the Irish authorities have no power to penalise foreign vessels for misbehaviour in our waters? These fishers watch every day as the SFPA board Irish vessels, and let alone the foreign registered boats that unload on the quayside beside them. It's totally demoralising for them as Irish fishers to see that the Irish Enforcement Agency is on them and foreign boats just go unnoticed. If you would feel comfortable breaking that news and recognise that it clearly creates a non-level playing field, then you must surely vote against this bill as it currently stands. And for those of you who do not represent fishing communities, or who are not familiar and who are not familiar with the fishing industry, I'll use this analogy. Would you feel comfortable visiting a local victim of a burglary and explaining to the distraught homeowners that the Gardaí, even though they knew who the culprits are, that they cannot punish them because they aren't Irish citizens? Homeowners wouldn't accept that. Ordinary, everyday, hard-working people wouldn't accept it either. And fishermen should not be forced to accept this bill. Now, Minister, there's been a lot said today in relation to your visit, and I was invited to your visit in Wexford. That's not to say I have been left out of other ministers' trips to Wexford. I understand the feeling of my deputies entirely, and I don't think that when a ministerial visit is in a county, I think really every deputy should be invited. I appreciate that that may have absolutely nothing to do with you. And I have already spent some time this morning in the House, I suppose you could say, trying to make public service and public servants accountable. And I think you've already had your own personal debacle where a press release was issued that was prior to your visit. And I think you know and well understand the ridiculousness of something like that happening. But I will say this, the fishermen that you met in Kilmore and the women that were there were very appreciative. You did give them over 2 hours of your time. And I know particularly that that visit didn't come to a halt till 10 o'clock that night, in which case I could see that you were left looking for somewhere to eat. I know your job isn't easy. My job is not easy. Everybody is well paid for it. It just doesn't make it easy. But I can tell you this, the fisherman's job is extremely difficult. It's all weathers, it's all dangers, away from their families, on board small vessels sometimes, or cramped vessels where they're mixing with people that they just have to work with and live with for days at a time. They have to reap a reward, because the reward they bring to us, and I said it last week in relation to the Marine Strategy Bill, they feed us. They make our coastal communities what they are. We have renowned fish restaurants in this country, and for a country the size of it, counties like Donegal and Wexford equally share in a tourist industry because we have such good restaurants. We can provide such wholesome, tasty food, and it comes from our natural resources. And I know that because you're from a fishing county, no more than myself, you know that that's the case. You know that there are certain measures being brought upon us by the EU that you yourself don't agree with. I don't agree with it, and I don't think it should be forced upon us. I think we do, at some point, have to renegotiate this. whether that's part of the common fisheries policy that I hope will be imminent, but we certainly have to start to recognise where our natural resources are. And it's not that we have a small amount of fishermen, because they all expand into a much wider community. And the provision of fresh fish from our waters into our restaurants and our hospitality and tourism sector, which are massive. And that's the community I live in. I might be a long way from Gorey, and they may not have a fishing community, but they most certainly bear the fruits of the fish that comes out of our waters in their restaurants also. And the same in Donegal, and the same in every county in this country. And I don't want to see it denigrated by the EU because they think that they're creating a level playing field. They're not. And everything that is happening today, particularly with fisheries, because we must get on with how we're going to develop our wind farm section, but that's going to have an impact. And on the same day, Minister, and I need to bring it up, and unfortunately it's more of a localised issue, but that evening I introduced you to Captain Phil Murphy, who works on behalf of Wexford County Council over our harbours. I asked where our health and safety audit was of the harbour in Duncannon. Nothing has happened. It's as if it was never requested. 4 times I've met with the fishermen in Duncannon, very busy men whose schedule doesn't lend to having mass meetings of all the fishermen to meet officials, let alone TDs. But the reality is that we compiled a list of things that were required in the harbour on a health and safety basis. Twice I've emailed your department and yourself of near-death experiences. Thankfully, they weren't death. There were accidents that resulted in the jet skiers being saved. But it could have easily been 2 fatalities. But not one thing, not one question, not one thing has happened, nor has it been addressed in any manner. There is now an email that I have seen from the harbour master to a representative of the fishermen, telling them that some monies that were provided by the department are at risk of being lost because the fishermen are in some way haven't turned up to a meeting. Minister, I will take it up with you, but I don't want to be putting things like this on the floor of the Dáil. But it is, unfortunately, the only way it seems that we can get our public servants to do what's required of them on a local basis, that actually is what these fishermen require at a local level. Because what's happening here today and discussing EU legislation, I believe, is probably beyond the powers that we will stop it happening. And therefore, I think we need to be able to look after them and compensate them where we can at local level. Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Deputy Murphy.